Near the top of the step street that leads up from Broadway to Park Terrace East, in the Inwood section of northern Manhattan, there sits a neglected mansion from a forgotten New York. The three-story, institutional-style structure was designed by Irish architect James O'Connor and constructed in 1912. By all accounts, one of the largest families the neighborhood has ever seen once inhabited the red brick residence. The home on the hill, overlooking Uptown's beloved Isham Park, was commissioned by businessman William H. Hurst. The elegant Uptown gentleman was president of the New York Stock Quotation Telegraph Company. Hearst, no relation to William Randolph Hearst, amassed his fortune by way of the ticker tape devices under the glass globes that kept early stockbrokers plugged into the financial markets. Hearst's company sold subscriptions to this revolutionary form of communication, and in the days before the Great Depression, business was good. If the house on the hill looks a bit institutional, that's by design. Hearst and his wife, her name was Minnie, had at least a dozen children. One could say they needed more space than most, and O'Connor, the architect, was up to the task. O'Connor graduated from Columbia University in 1898, where he earned the degree of Bachelor of Science in Architecture. O'Connor later designed convents, schools, and public housing projects, including the Morrisania Housing Project in the Bronx, the convent and hospital building for St. Vincent's Hospital in Greenwich Village, as well as the Tuberculosis and Cancer Hospital on Roosevelt Island, alongside partner James F. Delaney. Talented and respected, O'Connor was the recipient of numerous architectural awards for both residential and commercial projects, including Best Design for his work on the Grace Steamship Lines building, once located downtown. A specialist in the design of indoor tennis courts, O'Connor would also design private residences up and down the East Coast, including homes in Middleburg, Virginia, Greenwich, Connecticut, and of course, the brick house on West 215th Street, designed for William H. Hearst and his oh so many children. The home was built at the tail end of Inwood's Gilded Age. Nearby properties included the former Seaman Drake estate, whose owners created an over-the-top estate they called Mount Olympus on the Hudson. The fanciful Uptown escape included the still-standing Marble Arch to serve as the Broadway entrance to their property. Nearby, the wood frame home of William Bradley Isham guarded the circular entrance to the park, which now bears his name. Yes, in the years before the rise of apartment buildings, life on the hill was good. Splendid, even. A tour through the house in these early years shows a beautifully furnished residence. The 100 by 120 foot lot, which sat directly across West 215th Street from the old Seaman Mansion, was purchased by Hearst in 1910. A year after acquiring the property, Hearst served as the grand jury foreman who handed down indictments in the famous Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, in which some 146 garment workers, mostly young girls, were killed. The lethal inferno remains the deadliest industrial accident in New York City history. Mr. and Mrs. Hearst would require extra living quarters for their servants. The 1925 New York State Census for the home notes a handful of non-family members, including 4 female Irish servants and a 22-year-old Russian chauffeur. All 5 of the staff had been in the United States for only a year. In 1921, a butler, James J. O'Brien, sued Hearst because he was bitten by the family poodle on the lawn while serving tea. Mr. O'Brien wanted $2,000 and said that Mr. Hearst had pressured him to settle for only $25. It is not clear how the case was resolved. Old newspaper clippings also tell us that the Hearst family lost a daughter in 1925, and that the funeral mass was held inside Good Shepherd Church, just down the street from the family home. The family would be rocked by another tragedy when Minnie died in January of 1929. Like her daughter before her, Minnie's funeral was held at the Church of the Good Shepherd. There was likely not a dry eye in the house. Hurst himself would die less than 2 months after his wife's passing. After Hurst's death, the property was sold and the brick building was converted into a convent. In 1946, the grounds were expanded to create the Girard School of the Academy of the Sacred Heart of Mary. A student who attended the school in the early 1960s described the scene. The entranceway was a grand style with black and white tiles, a crystal chandelier, and symmetric winding staircases to the second floor. To the left of the staircase was a sunroom, which was used as a sacristy for the chapel. On the first floor, there were 2 sitting rooms on each side of the entrance. Opening into the larger area, a chapel on the right and a classroom on the left. Upstairs, another grand entranceway with classrooms surrounding it. All rooms had fireplaces and sunshine. Some rooms were painted light blue and some light yellow. Mantels were white. On the 3rd floor were the nuns' quarters. One died up there, so there could be a ghost. We heard rumors of terrible things that went on up there. We had quite an imagination. In the basement were the kitchen and a room to eat. Not a full cafeteria style. There was a nun that was one of the lesser orders of the RSHM, and she was called Sister, as opposed to Madam, which is what we called the teachers. We learned and spoke French. All prayers were in French. And we had to curtsy in a sweeping style, bringing one leg out in a ballet motion and bow with skirt held. Meeting a nun in the hallway to curtsy was difficult when you had a full load of books in your arms. The school closed around 1969, and in 1974, the Northeastern Conference of the Seventh-day Adventists bought the old Hurst house, as well as the property next door, 532 West 215th Street, for a new school, the Northeastern Academy. Sadly, the storied home has been bricked up since the 1980s. A tour of the interior of the home in 2012 revealed an elegant residence now in shambles. A ground-level floor shows fire damage, now decades old. There's also dated graffiti and assorted debris from the classrooms of ages past. The once beautiful staircases are now a sad sight when compared to dated photographs. But they are surprisingly solid. The building has been bricked up for decades, so the interior has remained bone dry. A building which harbored and nurtured generations of children now sits unused, a stately and curious reminder of a Lost Inwood. The future of the Hurst home remains unclear. Lacking any landmark designation, it could be demolished tomorrow. Hopefully, a wealthy benefactor will step in before that happens.